line. Kelly, I do appreciate you joining us. How are you?
I'm like everybody, probably traumatized by the last couple weeks, but I'm glad that the Sandy Hook parents got what I think is probably one of the best results they could get in Travis County, Texas, and heartened by that and that victory against defamation and disinformation. Thank you for having me, by the way.
Of course, Kelly. Thank you for being here. A lot of questions to get to in a short period of time. I want to ask you this, knowing Alex Jones as well as you've known him over the years, do you believe when he says things like that the Sandy Hook shooting didn't happen and a lot of other conspiracy theories, do you think that he actually believes it? Or behind closed doors, did he tell you, listen, I really don't believe this. I just say it to get clicks and make money? Which is it?
Well, I think this is sort of a great, the great ongoing Wizard of Oz, is he an actor or is he not question, which was actually brought up in family litigation to obstruct a lot of evidence from coming in. I think that the thing about Alex that I always say is that he's a very sick man, and that I think his behaviors are abhorrent and what he says is terrible, but I blame his attorneys who have long had a duty to stop him. As somebody who's been defamed on Infowars about things that I know that he knows aren't true, if he's able to understand that, what I would say about his compulsive lying and proclivity to perjure himself is that I think he's as ill as anybody can be, to the point that he's able to convince himself so that he can sort of project that out there to the world. Mm-hmm. So I think it's very clear he's not apologetic. I think he's used this whole thing to further a very clearly, ongoing course of deceptive trade. And those are my opinions about him in that way.
Was he ever abusive to you or your kids during your marriage?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So people automatically jump on, I have a lot of people that are finally listening to me, and I'm super grateful for that. I've had people that have been listening, sort of following me on Twitter at Real Kelly Jones, for a long time, that have believed in me. But, I'm a domestic abuse survivor, and I've been abused by Alex Jones in court for almost a decade. This is really more like a true financial crime that's been obstructed from people's understanding because I was married to him. And it's really what he's done to our kids that he paraded, use their names as props, sort of in association with his violent ex-wife who's assaulted my child, according to her own truth and what she reported to CPS. Of course, yes, I married Alex because I was pregnant. I first filed for divorce in 2004. I was always trying to leave. It's a cult. It's very hard to leave, like everybody who's been in a narcissistic abuse cycle, or anybody who understands it. And if you don't, I encourage everybody to look into that. I was lured into a web, and then I was basically, once the door shut and, I was entwined, it was near impossible to leave. Brian, I'm still trying to leave him. I was in divorce negotiations while Sandy Hook, the horrible things were happening. I was outspoken in my marriage to my great, ongoing abuse. And I filed again in 2013, and I'm still in litigation with Alex Jones.
Does it amaze you, Kelly, that he still has millions of people in this country that not only call him entertaining. I mean, it was just Joe Rogan a few weeks on his podcast, the biggest podcast on the planet right now. And he basically said, what has Alex Jones done wrong? He's just an entertaining guy. And I say to myself, the overwhelming majority of people in this country disagree. They find him, like me, to be a despicable human being who lies, conspiracy theories, says despicable things. I don't know whether he believes some of the stuff he says or not, but I know one thing: he does it for clicks and he does it for money. And he continued to lie in the courtroom. He perjured himself in the courtroom. I mean, to me, he's just a despicable human being. But what do you make of the people out there that actually believe that he's not despicable, that he's just an entertaining guy?
Well, again, Brian, I think you brought up a great point when you brought up Joe Rogan. I mean, Alex has said terrible things about Joe Rogan in the past after, being on his show, horrible, disgusting things about him. And so Joe is, Alex is a very successful manipulator and con artist. And his greatest con is sort of projecting out to his audience emotions that he doesn't have, relationships he doesn't have, selling himself as a decent, good man who cares about other people, which he doesn't have the capacity for. It's just tragedy for him, honestly. Like, a rattlesnake's a rattlesnake. So again, turn back to what I always say, because he is my kid's dad. It really, one day, I'm sure pretty soon, people will understand the real people who are responsible for the propaganda that led people all the way into our nation's capital on January 6th, that caused the bereaved parents of beautiful, 6-year-old, vibrant Jesse Lewis, who died horribly, who led them through this horror and profited from it. I think that people will soon understand the real cause of this, because he is not well and he's no mastermind, and he's really unable to come to these schemes. That the real reason why Alex Jones is on the air today and didn't apologize and et cetera, and had that platform, I will say, tempering it with that, he didn't apologize while having that platform, rather, it's because of the real corruption that happened that's underlying in family court, which is cloaked, like Alex Jones is, and the celebrity, which just of itself is a phenomenon. It's the great Oz, right, which is cloaked in this really deceptive, sort of inherently judgy family court business, which it is not. I mean, it really is not. The reason why I'm out here advocating is not about that. I've been advocating for years, and my kids have gone through things that are, have just ruined their childhood, taken everything away from them. Their mother lived in depravity around alcohol and drugs and et cetera. But at the end of the day, that I think that he's an effective con artist, like just what you said. And he's out there, like, while the trial's going on, Brian, and he's engaged in deceptive trade. Like, him getting up there and repeatedly, even after the judge instructs him, like, guilty is a criminal term. You were found liable because you violated discovery response. You were sanctioned for that. Discovery is part of our civil legal process, and it's because we do not have trials by ambush. So the Perry Mason moment was very rare in civil court. We do not have, like, these, smoking gun things happen often, because it is not a trial by ambush civil system. It's a system where you have discovery that you propound or ask for, and the respondent has 30 days to answer it. He went years without responding. He doesn't know what's going on in litigation. And so when he gets up on the air, first of all, he's entirely clueless about the process, Brian, to the point that he didn't even know in a deposition that Kester Lynch Farrar and Ball conducted just a few months ago, who was suing him and what was in his sworn, like, under oath affidavit, which is the same as sworn testimony in court. So he is able to somehow still get up on the air. I don't know. There is federal law, rather, against deceptive trade. His free speech argument, or whatever, his free speech con, that he's used to raise money to sue me for my free speech. So his free speech, absolute fraud, which is about horrible, deceptive, divisive, inciting propaganda that's harmed the Sandy Hook parents, that harmed me. I was defamed on Infowars. Alex Jones learned this from his family law attorneys who went on the air to defame me. His free speech fraud, and coupled with his everyman, I'm a good guy stance. And then in addition to that, just absolutely misleading things about the actual legal process, particularly, sort of affirmed by the attorney he fired, that guy, Robert Barnes, that's been on the air. I mean, it's abhorrent. But here's what I really think, Brian. I think that, that people, even his audience, I think it's a cult. I think that people associate themselves with this discourse that are disenfranchised and don't understand, even after he disparages the jurors while the trial is going on, as extremely blue collar folks, good working people, like probably his base, right? So even when he's actually disparaging them, even after he allegedly, went after Trump, and now when he's on the stand saying, oh yeah, I'm going to have Scarlett Lewis on, Sandy Hook mom, to talk about sensible gun control and gun violence. I mean, that's never happening. So somehow they're able to selectively hear what they want to. He's not an entertainer. We heard various people, and Alex testified that he's not, presented that he was some sort of journalist in his pleadings. I don't know exactly how that came out with him,
But
But I did
Kelly,
see his staff. Yeah.
but Kelly, you sound like, you're a smart lady. I spoke with you on the phone over the weekend. You sound like a nice lady. I have to ask you this: the nights that he would come home from work, you're married to this guy, and you know some of the nonsense that he says. Not some, a lot of the nonsense he says on a regular basis. Didn't he ever come home and did you ever say, Alex, why did you say this? Why did you say that? That's not true. Why do you lie on the air? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? Did you? I would imagine you had to have conversations like that with him. What did he say?
Well, absolutely, I did, Brian. I mean, first of all, people need to understand that I met Alex in 1999. So if anybody's watching Stranger Things, like not too long after that, I mean, yeah, a decade after it, but sort of in that era, it was a different time. And that I was, I got after a very tragic thing that I don't talk about. You can listen to some of this or read about it on my Twitter feed, but I was pregnant and I saw no way out. I had a domestically abusive boyfriend, whatever he is.
Right.
And so I married him because I didn't see a way out. And yes, absolutely. I spoke about my marriage. Like I told you earlier, I first filed for divorce in 2004. I was trying to leave him ever thereafter. I was in divorce, I didn't know they were illegal, but I was in negotiations with him. With
Kelly, I
attorneys,
get all that. I'm sorry to interject, but I totally understand all that, and I sympathize with you, Kelly. You've done absolutely nothing wrong, and I feel for you and your family. I really do. With that being said, when you addressed him and you said, Alex, why did you say this on your show? Why did you lie and why did you say this? Because he does it every day. I'm just curious what his response was to you behind closed doors.
Well, I think that's a great question, right? Because I think people always perceive the current rendition, the Battleship, Infowars, Trump Lactica that's out there, as his ever rendition of Alex Jones. I mean, Alex's, Infowars was always terrible, but it did, the only sort of semi-truthful thing, and he presented it in a very deceptive way, that Alex did say is that there was a time when Infowars was very different and had a bipartisan sort of following. And so I was absolutely outspoken, question him. I was misled to do what I did to help him attain the level of success he did. And I distanced myself from him as quickly as I possibly could in my marriage. I was embarrassed. But when he would do something like, I remember, I don't know if you remember it, Brian, but when he went on Pierce Morgan, I was just like horrified. Yeah. And I just absolutely was like, what are you doing? Like, this is insane. I don't know if people even know that The View had him on. Like, he was out there sort of as a regular, I don't know why, but personality, whatever. And he's not an actor. This is not an act. And I mean, yes, I think the thing that also happened is I was a bit of a governor to him in some ways because I was so outspoken. So if you look at the difference, even though it was terrible, a lot of Infowars in the early days was about, and it was around, overreaching government control, biometrics that didn't even exist really yet, about new traffic cameras everywhere, privacy stuff, things like that. And that spoke to me. And it still does. Like I still, am conservative in that way, that I think that we deserve our privacy. And I think that's across the aisle kind of thing. What happened, like all of this stuff, like Sandy Hook. I mean, I was definitely already in negotiations with him and horrified. Like, how can you do this? Like, it's just abhorrent. And so it became, he became increasingly, more, I really wasn't involved with Infowars pretty much after the birth of my third child. And that was in 2008. And so he became increasingly more abusive. The narcissistic love bomb, that brief honeymoon period. Just
did he ever put his hand on? Did he ever put his hands on you?
Yes, Alex did. I mean, most of his abuse, and believe me, I'm sure everybody who has a brainwashed family member out there can understand how effective a manipulator and abusive, he is to people's minds.
So but Alex Jones physically
he strangled me while I was pregnant. Yes, he strangled me while I was pregnant. He grabbed me by the neck while I was pregnant with our second child, and he strangled me. And I have witnesses that I called that I can corroborate that with. Absolutely. But yes, but most of it, and it's a worse, it's a kind of immersion in cultic, severe, like denigration, isolation, lack of financial autonomy, And while also, like, the other thing about Alex is he was mostly gone, or I would have probably left a long time ago. And then he used, as many people do, the children to control me and make sure that I stayed there. And so, the worst kind of thing that anybody can do is to harm a child before their mom. There's nothing more hurtful than that. So just real quick, Brian, I mean, I had my kids taken from me, and I had to watch their lives just be, their innocence and their health and everything be just obliterated before me. So that's the worst abuse
Can
that
I
Alex
ask
has
you,
ever done.
first of all, let me just say this. I am so sorry. That is horrific that happened to you. And I'm so sorry. I have to ask you, do you remember that day? I'm sure you do. It's such horrible. When your ex-husband, Alex Jones, put his hands around your neck when you were pregnant with one of his children, your child. First of all, what sparked that to happen? Not that there would be any excuse for any man to do that, but what sparked that? And then after that happened, did you call law enforcement? Or if you didn't, tell us why you didn't.
Okay. Yes, I do remember it very vividly. I remember that. I don't remember what sparked it, but he was always infuriated with me, and he has done other physical things to me that I'm not going to discuss here, but that have been just like, I can't even think about it. But, so I remember, our house, our 3-bedroom house that we had then. And I remember what the bedroom looked like. And I remember that I was in the closet, and he was just after me and wouldn't let me go, and was just like, not like holding me, but like berating me and barraging me. I mean, the man is incessant. Like, he is that much energy at you, raging when he's doing it. He would rage at me all the time, along with the gaslighting, along with all of the things that narcissistic abusers are skilled in. And so I don't know what precipitated it, but I remember exactly being in our closet and being like, grabbed around the neck, strangled like, not just for a second, but not like to the point of death almost. But I was pregnant, and it was terrifying. And I called the only friend I had at the time, like a neighbor friend I had made. And I was isolated. My friend circle was taken from me. I was not allowed to be out and about. I worked all the time for him, like a kind of forced labor. And I didn't call law enforcement then, as I didn't call CPS or law enforcement many times, because he would tell me that CPS would take them from both of us. And I don't, and honestly, knowing the court system and how it works and how absolutely corrupt Texas law enforcement and negligent and what's happened to my kids, I was terrified of him. The only thing I had, that I couldn't lose was my kids. And so I didn't report. And I think a lot of women don't report. And, and that's
listen,
what
you make a very good point there. In no way, shape, or form am I, victim shaming or say, oh, well, you should have called the police. I understand that every circumstance is different. And I'm sure you were probably very scared. You were probably very afraid of him, I would imagine. And so I don't blame you at all. I'm just very sorry that happened to you and you had to go through something like that. Forgive me if by the way, if you're just joining us, we're speaking with Alex Jones' ex-wife. She is Kelly Jones. So forgive me if I'm being a little bit too personal here, and you don't have, but I have to ask you this. Was he, I would imagine him being the scumbag that he was and that he still is as a husband, was he also a selfish lover? I would imagine he probably didn't treat you very well either. If that's going
I'm not going to talk about that. That is way too personal and expensive in a way. Not that you're victim shaming me. I know that you're in Las Vegas.
Well, I would imagine he didn't. I don't mean it like that.
I'm happily remarried to a man who is super hot and wonderful and loving and kind, and that's the only, I don't even think about that, honestly. I try not to.
Understood. And I'm happy, by the way, that you found someone that you connect with that is respectful to you. Thank God for that. But I would imagine he was never there for you, right? In any sort of way. Obviously, when you're a married couple, you need to be there for each other. You have a bad day at work, whatever the case may be. I would imagine he was never the type of guy to ask you about how you were feeling, your feelings, or anything among those lines, right? Just a bad husband.
I mean, I again reiterate that he is not normal, in any way, sense of the word. He's bizarrely, obviously, not normal. And so the relationship was that of really, if you imagine a lamprey, if anybody knows what that is,
Yes.
that like lured me in quickly with some sort of like cloak of deceit or love bomb or whatever it is, was able to basically make me be reliant on, not on him because he was reliant on me too, but like financially, like enmeshed with him, I guess. And it was, it was of course not that. It was the opposite of that. It was me picking up. Literally, I want to tell you something because you've gotten a detail out there that few people ever have. Nobody's really asked me that with specificity, and it's true. And I will swear to that sport. But he would like leave glasses of urine around when he was on an overnight radio show for me to empty for him in the early years of our marriage.
What? Wait.
Yes.
What? Wait.
Yes.
So hold on. You're telling me in your house, Alex Jones would leave glasses of urine around? Why would he? What? That is the weirdest thing I've ever heard.
Like he'd be on like Art Bell overnight, and he'd be too lazy or whatever it was to get up, and he would pee in a glass. And I will never forget like going into the little like converted dining room, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
That was in our humble house. It wasn't super. It was really just a regular house.
Yeah.
And trying to, having to go right to work for him. And then right there by my desk is this glass of urine.
That's
and I'm
bizarre.
like, what is this? And I smelled it, Brian. And I was like, oh my God. And the thing that Alex didn't like about me is that I was assertive. And I've always, I was assertive even when I was being horribly mistreated.
Yeah.
And I was obviously entrapped, but I did speak up, and that made, he doesn't, like, no way. Like,
well, I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. And I'm glad you're doing much better. And my heart goes out to you and your family. I guess this would be my last question for you, Kelly, because unfortunately we're running out of time, but I'd love to have you on again sometime. But what do you want to see happen to him? I think besides the Sandy Hook families, of course, they have their say and they should. But you're somebody who knew this man very well, and you still do know him pretty darn well. What do you think, Kelly, should happen to your ex-husband, Alex Jones? Do you think he belongs in jail, or do you think he should just be fined up the yin-yang and be broke? What do you think as his ex-wife should happen to Alex Jones?
There's an attorney rule in the state of Texas where if you have a client of limited capacity, you have a duty to initiate probate proceedings to put them basically through serious medical investigation so that they can be, if necessary, put on somebody under somebody's conservatorship, and if necessary, institutionalized. That's what I think should happen. And I think his attorneys should be in jail. I think the judges that allowed this and allowed real due process violations and empowered Alex Jones all the way up to the capital steps, but from the crime and corporate fraud he committed against me, they should be jailed. I think he is the kind of dangerous that the kind of people that have to be protected from others and from themselves in that way are. And that's absolutely what should have happened years and years ago. And absolutely blame Travis County, family attorneys for that.
Understood. Well, Kelly, let me just end by saying this. You sound like a very nice lady. I'm sure you're a very good mother. I am so sorry that this SOB treated you the way he did over the years. Nobody deserves that. You certainly did not. And I know this is not easy. Some of this stuff is not easy for you to talk about. I appreciate your candor in doing so. I hope to have you on again sometime. And I'm glad you're doing better. I'm glad you're doing better, and you found a great guy, it sounds to me. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing some of these personal stories. I do think it's important for the world to know who truly is Alex Jones. And I don't think there's any better person to do that than you, because you know him best. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you.
Appreciate